to put it in a concise way, the KGB intelligence recruited him, the Putin intelligence exposed him.
Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Rashkin Report, and I'm your host, Yuri Rashkin. I am very excited because on this program, we get to begin our long-awaited conversation with former KGB agent, really head of the KGB station in Washington, D.C., and a man of quite some notoriety for some very good reasons, Yuri Shvets. Yuri, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Yuri. Nice to be here.
It's
well, I just want to make a small contact, a little bit small correction. I was not a chief of station. I was just a field officer. So the guy who is riding in the streets, who has boots in the ground, and who does the job.
Just your regular KGB field officer. It's very important to get the right terms. I understand. Can you tell our audience a little bit about how you got into this line of work, what attracted you to it, and how that process went a little bit?
Well, I would say that in the early 80s, where I was invited to the department number 1 in the KGB Foreign Intelligence Service, the elite department, the centerpiece of the entire KGB intelligence network. So it was at the time the job any man in Russia could dream about. I am saying the man, I'm telling man because ladies, women at that time, they were not employed by the KGB for operational activities. It was a dream for different reasons. Reason number 1, it was still an iron curtain dividing Soviet Union from the West. And few Russian people, few Soviet people had an opportunity to penetrate this iron curtain. The intelligence officers, they had this opportunity. So to travel outside of the Soviet Union, it was a perk, a dream of any Soviet citizen. Second, you had access to information. People, again, most Russians, 99.999, could not even imagine. It was a breathtaking world of international espionage. You come to your desk in the morning, you open the case file, and it was better than John Le Carré novel, and it's real, you're involved in this, you're part of this. Besides, it was an adventure, non-stop adventure.
Is that how you looked at this from the beginning? Like your life is going to be an adventure, you get to travel, you get to have access to information. Is that what kind of led you?
This is a part of the equation. Another part of the equation, it was a certain degree of sacrifice because, I remember when I first joined the so-called Academy of Intelligence Service, there was a huge map on the wall, the map of the Soviet Union. And it was the map showed US, American, and American allies, military bases all the way along the borders of the Soviet Union. The country was encircled by dozens of those bases. And I remember the general showed us this map, saying, do I need to explain you anything else? You see, the country is in danger, in mortal danger. And it's you guys who can save it. So my task and the task of all my colleagues at the time, arriving to United States with a mission, the task number 1, assignment number 1 was not to miss the signs of preparation of the Pentagon for sudden nuclear strike on the Soviet Union. And, we felt strongly about it. For 3 months, it was enough for me. 3 months to stay in this country was enough for me to realize that the task was phony, just phony, because it was a big revelation that this country, The United States, they cannot launch a sudden nuclear strike on the Soviet Union. People are different, the system are different. People have a lot to lose in case of the nuclear war. So I came to understand that the whole assignment was phony. Then I asked myself, why this assignment? And it took me about 9 years to find out the truth. And the truth was that the intelligence service, it was a machine of self-deception of the leadership of the Soviet Union. And now, Leonid Brezhnev in the early 80s, he was in bad health already. So in Politburo, and Politburo was the highest governing body in the country, there were two guys, the KGB chairman and the Minister of Defense. And they wanted to become successors to Brezhnev. And they had a position of people who were closer to Brezhnev. So they choose to invent this scare, the danger, mortal danger coming from the United States and NATO. And if you have this danger, who can be the savior? Who is the savior? KGB and the Ministry of Defense. So they made this phony task. And in any intelligence service, if you task to find something, you will find it. It's a bureaucracy. It was not just the Soviet intelligence. This is American intelligence, British, etc. If they are tasked, they will find what they were asked to find out. So they requested to find this information, and the intelligence service produced. People in the Politburo was shaking out of mortal fear. As a result, the KGB chairman became the leader of the Soviet Union after Leonid Brezhnev passed away. But eventually, this silly policy, it led to explosion of the arms race in the 80s when Ronald Reagan was the president of the United States. And eventually, it was the last straw which broke the bone of the Soviet Union. And
was it difficult for you to be a field officer with all the knowledge that you have acquired about the dangers of America and how America is trying to, destroy Soviet Union, and then you come to America and you see that things are a little different?
Yep.
How did that work? How did you respond to that?
Well, I was kind of trained. I was multicultural guy, used to live in different cultural environments. So when I made this revelation that this task was phony and Americans are not warmongers, they're nice, good people, and this is what I was called. One of my friends, he said that this is a warm country, United States, warm in a sense that people are warm, they're nice, they're smiling to you. You don't have a hostile environment, People do not treat you well. In the Soviet Union, you felt more hostilities from people around you than in this country. It was nice. I liked to be in this country. I liked to be in this environment, even though, sometimes there were funny moments. I remember we lived we rented an apartment in a place in Alexandria, Virginia. They called it Hamlets. And this particular community, there were lots of people, young people from working for the government, the Pentagon, probably the CIA, etc., etc., etc. And one day there was a huge snowfall. And my car and other cars on the parking lot were covered with snow. And I was digging out, removing the snow, and there was a lady with a shovel next to me. And she offered me the shovel. And I started, removing the snow, and she felt some kind of accent, alien accent in my English. And she said, "Where are you from?" And I said, "The Soviet Union." And she was like, "Do you work for the government?" And I said, "Well, I work for the Soviet News Agency TASS. In the Soviet Union, everything is the government." And she just disappeared. She vanished in the thin air. And then her little daughter came over and said are you done with the snow? I said, "Yes." "Can I have a shovel?" So she sent her like 5 or 6-year-old daughter to pick it up because she was afraid to talk to me because I was working for the Soviet government. So apparently she had a security clearance working for the Pentagon. She didn't want to fill out these forms for many pages of lengthy forms to report about our conversation.
What made you want to leave the service there?
Well, as I said, it took me about 10 years to find out the truth, the bureaucratic truth about what we were doing, the bureaucratic nature of the country. And it's still the same. Modern Russia, bureaucratically, is the same, and the Soviet Union was in the late 80s. And then in the late 80s, KGB started building economic empire, its own economic empire, which is right now in existence, which exists right now in the Soviet Union. So everything was about, they were saying things like, the country, you need to work for the country. You can be ready to sacrifice your life for the sake of the country, but behind the scene, the real efforts were about money, about your business, etc. So I became really disgusted in the late 80s with all this, and I resigned. I resigned in September 1990, a year before the collapse of the Soviet Union, just in disgust, because what I saw at that time, it was not something I saw and felt when I was joining the agency 10 years before that.
Well, before we are, I think very important to mention, even though you've done an amazing job of sharing this knowledge with audiences throughout, you are the big source for the book by Craig Unger, American Compromat, that really ties in for kind of everyday, person who just lives their life, exactly how Donald Trump was recruited and worked over and groomed as an agent for Kremlin, becoming, kind of a money laundering machine. But now we see, and thank you for, first of all, for your work there. But second, just recently, this news broke in the Guardian newspaper that in a way kind of verifies what you've been saying, which is that Putin and Kremlin made decision to support Trump in an organized way. How does that feel to see this validation of your work and just in general response that you've had to explaining to people exactly the connection between Donald Trump and Kremlin?
Well, I should say that there have been lots of reviews on the book American Compromat, and particularly on that Trump, on this part of the book about Trump, how he was cultivated, recruited, how the Russian intelligence helped him to be elected to the position of the president of the United States. I haven't seen any negative review. All of them were very good. And many reviewers were former CIA, FBI agents. And one of the last reviews I read said that this story about Donald Trump and his ties to the KGB and Russian intelligence is unassailable. But still, I am very happy when I read several days ago this article in Guardian and the parts of the document which was published, on which this article was based, intelligence document obtained by the US intelligence from the Kremlin, which basically fully supported what I uncovered during my personal investigation and what was included in the book American Compromat. So
do you consider the documents in Guardian to be real and authentic?
Yes. Well, it means it's a question what you mean by real. I'm not sure. And I am skeptical that, let's say, CIA showed the Guardian journalists the real classified documents stamped secret or top secret, because journalists, they don't have access to classified information. They don't have clearance, right? But I believe that it was a compilation of different documents obtained by the US intelligence, and an official representative of the US intelligence vouched, saying that, yes, I vouch that this is real. You know, Guardian is a serious newspaper. It's not Russia Today. So I'm certain that they did the vetting, and they knew that it was real. Besides, well, I think I understand the real source of this document and many other documents. His name is Oleg Smolenkov. This gentleman worked in the US embassy, I'm sorry, Russian embassy in Washington, D.C. from 2003 2008. And I believe this is when he was recruited by the, I think it was the FBI, because this is what usually FBI does. And then ambassador, Russian ambassador, Washington, D.C., he was transferred to the Kremlin. He became the chief foreign policy advisor to President Putin. And Oleg Smolenkov, he was close to the ambassador. Ambassador brought him as his chief advisor to the Kremlin. So Smolenkov, Russian and American intelligence agent, was the chief advisor to the chief advisor to Putin. And he worked in this capacity from 2008 to 2017. And over this period of time, as far as I know, the modus operandi, he provided a wealth of information about what was going on in the Kremlin. So there are much more information about everything, every aspects of the Russian foreign policy, including Russian meddling into 2016 and 2020 presidential elections.
And it is interesting because you said that this agent Smolenkov stopped being an agent in 2017. Why?
He was extracted because Donald Trump became the president of the United States. And there were some leaks, unnecessary leaks about the information from Russia and about the source of this information, which could lead Russian counterintelligence to realize who is this guy, who is the source. And he was still in the Kremlin. So the guy was in mortal danger. Besides, there were instances where Donald Trump revealed to the Russian ambassador Kislyak and Lavrov, classified information which had been passed over to American intelligence community by Israeli intelligence. And Trump just shared this stuff with his Russian friends, I mean, without any remorse. So I understand that American leaders, bosses of American intelligence community, they were in shock, they were in awe. They realized that the US president can just betray the best golden asset of the US intelligence ever had in the Kremlin. So they decided to extract him. Even though this extraction, it was a big loss for the US intelligence because they lost this source right now. So they extracted him. He and his family, they came on vacation to Montenegro in summer of 2017, and this is where they disappeared. So it's my understanding here that they were ferreted out by American Spetsnaz or whatever from Montenegro by boat and so on to Italy, and then the flight.
So, but you think that he is all right these days?
Yeah, I think, yeah, I'm positive he is in the United States and he's safe.
All right, that is good to hear. So many questions. I guess just to wrap things up for today, How do you see Donald Trump going forward? Do you think that this was a success, or do you think this was a failure of Russian Kremlin, Secret Service, whatever you name it, to on one hand get the agent in, on the other hand, it seems like maybe people know that he was working for Russia, so that's probably not really good. So is this victory or fail? How do you see this?
Well, Donald Trump, it was a victory for the KGB intelligence service because it was the KGB, the first chief director, it was my department who brought him into cooperation. And then the Russian intelligence under Putin did something my former boss in the KGB intelligence service, he said that we should never do. He said we should, under any circumstances, we shouldn't meddle into American presidential elections, because if you meddle, this operation should be impeccable. Because if you fail, and Americans will see that we intervened, we meddled into the elections, the negative ramification, the backfire will be so horrible that it will grossly overweight positive objectives, positive results we could get in terms, in case of success. So it was, the risk wasn't worth it. And this is the mistake the Russians did. Donald Trump would have been elected without any Russian support, because no one have shown and proved that this support was crucial for Trump election. Most likely he would win anyway. And then no one knows about his relations with Moscow, and Russia has an agent in the White House. He could do miracles for Russia, everything. But by the way, the Russian meddled, and they exposed themselves immediately. Every week they did some stupid things which showed that the Russians were helping Trump. It was just, like a Soviet-style collective farm rather than intelligence operation. So they exposed Trump. So when he was elected the president over the next 4 years, he had to prove in the United States that he is not a Russian agent. So he was doing something which was not good for the Kremlin, just to cover himself, But he did something useful for the Russians. He put on hold many sanctions against Russia, as a state, against Russian officials, the sanctions which were passed on by the US Congress. So he did a lot to put them on hold. And the same story about Nord Stream 2, right? Because on one hand, there were sanctions, on the other hand, he was not aggressive in pursuing those sanctions. And then under his administration, the Russians built about 90% of this pipeline, So to put it in a concise way, the KGB intelligence recruited him, the Putin intelligence exposed him. And this is how it ended.
Yuri Shvets, former field officer for KGB, and now news analyst and the expert in all sorts of useful things for us to know. Thank you so much for being on a program, and I look forward to continuing our conversation in the future.
Yes, thank you, Yuri. Thank you, everybody.